The tension in the room didn't so much break as dissolve into stunned silence. Med drones hovered uncertainly, their tranquilizer darts useless against this unprecedented scenario. Grothian delegates exchanged glances that would later translate to, "Can we file for extra credit?" Then the ceiling intercom crackled to life. Dean Valthas's voice sounded like he'd been mainlining espresso. "Kethvar, why do our structural sensors show two void stalkers in exam hall C?" The professor looked from Jake to the mother, now politely accepting another cheese curl, to the hatchling happily chewing on a desk leg. His datapad made a sad little beep as it officially ran out of storage from all the footage he'd recorded. "Educational paradigm shift," he said into his wristcom. Then, after considering the paperwork involved, added, "Requesting more snacks." Meanwhile, 17 floors up, the university's administration office looked like a disaster zone. 3 deans were simultaneously trying to revoke Jake's student visa, approve him for an honorary doctorate, and figure out if domesticating deadly aliens counted as an extracurricular activity. The budget committee had already started, calculating the cost of retrofitting Exam Hall C with void stalker-friendly furniture. The campus cafeteria was frantically reverse engineering cheese curls from Jake's leftover bag. And somewhere in an overflowing inbox, an email marked urgent contained just 3 words. "More humans coming." Earth isn't classified as primitive in the Galactic Encyclopedia. It's classified under a much more concerning category, aggressively hospitable. This became abundantly clear when Jake Martinez leaned against a half-destroyed exam hall desk, casually scratching behind the ears of creatures that should have turned him into an appetizer. The professor's datapad hovered between them, recording Jake's explanation like it held the secrets of the universe. "You guys keep trying to study predator-prey dynamics," Jake said, feeding another cheese curl to the mother voidstalker. "Earth figured out you can just skip that part." His fingers moved in steady circles behind the hatchling's ears. "We domesticated wolves because wolves looked at our trash heaps and decided friendship was better than starvation." The class roster read like a stress response demonstration. Pip had reformed enough to present as a very damp Ziparian. Thane's crystalline structure showed fresh fractures just from listening. The Grothian delegation vibrated at a frequency that made the floor hum. Jake explained human history like someone describing their weird hometown. "We saw an animal that could outrun us and thought, let's ride it. Then we named it Thunderhoof and braided flowers into its mane. Same deal with wolves. Took the ones that didn't bite us, gave them table scraps. And 10,000 years later they cry when we won't share pizza." The mother voidstalker crunched another snack, apparently considering this information. Earth's dirty little secret was persistence hunting. Not the physical part. Every planet has predators that chase things, but the psychological warfare. Humans didn't just outlast prey, they outbefriended it. That's why cattle follow humans but bolt from lions. Why horses let random monkeys strap saddles to them. Evolution favored the ones who looked at a saber-tooth and thought, but what if we pet it? Professor Kethvar's notes became increasingly frantic. His previous research papers all assumed interspecies dynamics required dominance displays. Yet here was a human treating apex predators like slightly misbehaving Labrador retrievers. His datapad displayed side-by-side comparisons. Ancient cave paintings of humans riding horses versus security footage of Jake scritching a voidstalker's chin. The similarities were disturbing. The real kicker came when Jake mentioned his family's profession. Mom runs a wildlife sanctuary back home. "You know those earth animals that make voidstalkers look cuddly? Grizzly bears, Komodo dragons, hippos. Actually, never mind hippos, those are just murder barrels with teeth." He fed the hatchling another cheese curl. "Point is, we've been doing this a while." The mother voidstalker made a sound that the university's audio filters would later classify as questioning warble. Her ruff settled. When Jake explained Earth's conservation tactics, how humans rehabilitate injured predators rather than euthanizing them, how sanctuary workers use food rewards to build trust, how the Martinez family Christmas cards regularly featured species that could decapitate a man, all wearing silly hats, Pip made a wet noise of disbelief. "So your survival strategy is, what? Bribing things that could kill you?" "Pretty much." Jake tossed her the snack bag. "Works better than you'd think." The professor's syllabus was undergoing real-time edits. Surviving apex predators became interspecies. Communication The midterm practical shifted from terror response evaluation to non-threatening body language. Demonstration, even the course description, changed. This class will no longer provide life insurance waivers. But tell me, university's cafeteria staff received urgent orders to mass-produce cheese curls. Maintenance crews started reinforcing furniture for heavier species. The dean quietly moved lethal fauna handling from required coursework to elective status. But Earth's most unsettling trait wasn't domestication, it was consistency. The same neurological wiring that made humans bond with wolves also made them name hurricanes and argue with self-checkout machines. A species pathologically incapable of leaving well enough alone. The professor's notes included a new category, human weirdness factor, with subheadings for unexpected affection and snack-based diplomacy. When Jake mentioned humans once kept tigers as pets, 3 students requested transfers to safer academic programs, botany specifically. The hatchling, now christened Patches by faculty vote, had transitioned from exam subject to teaching assistant. It lounged across 2 reinforced desks, purring loud enough to make Pip's residual biogel vibrate. Professor HFY observed its relaxed posture, the complete lack of defensive spikes in its ruff, physical signs of trust that should have taken months of conditioning to achieve. So wait, Thane said, examining his newly stabilized fractures. The secret to surviving deadly creatures is just treating them nicely? Jake shrugged. And snacks. Mostly snacks. The mother voidstalker chuffed in agreement, her tail thumping against the floor like a metronome counting down the end of traditional xenobiology. The syllabus rewrite would take weeks. The policy changes would take longer. But in that moment, with cheese dust on everyone's claws and Patches batting at a pen like a house cat, the galaxy's most feared predators had officially been downgraded to large, potentially dangerous friends, which is how Galactic University's xenobiology program traded fear exams for interspecies. Snack time. The incident report landed on Dean Valthas's desk with a thud that matched his headache. The summary read, Educational paradigm shift, requesting more snacks. Administrative override codes scrolled down the side, priority level, universe altering. Somewhere in the building, a maintenance droid welded extra reinforcement struts to Exam Hall C's doorframe, while muttering about idiotic mammal diplomacy. Across campus, the changes came fast and weird. Facilities installed heavier furniture rated for Voidstalker weight class. The cafeteria tripled its cheese curl production. The university's insurance providers quietly updated their policies to include bonding activities with lethal fauna under wellness programs. Professor HFY's classroom barely resembled its former self. Where stress response monitors once tracked physiological collapse, now they measured interspecies rapport metrics. Pip sat comfortably at her desk, fully solid, taking notes while Patches the Voidstalker hatchling gnawed on a reinforced chair leg nearby. Thine's crystalline structure showed fewer fractures than he'd had in years. Even the Grothian delegation had stopped their perpetual vibrating after realizing Voidstalkers interpreted it as a challenge. The new curriculum focused on reciprocal socialization techniques. Week 1, recognizing play behavior versus actual threat. Week 3, appropriate snack offerings across species. The midterm became a practical demonstration of non-threatening body language. Graduate students from the xenopsychology department lined up to observe what they called the Martinez effect, how one human's casual confidence recalibrated an entire ecosystem's interactions. Jake's fingers made a crinkling sound as he reached into the bag. The hatchling's ears swiveled toward the noise. Its pupils dilated, not in aggression but in the same way Earth cats focus on a laser pointer. He held out a single cheese-dusted curl between 2 fingers, arm extended. The universal configuration for, please don't eat my hand. Predator psychology is simple. Movement triggers chase instincts, fear pheromones signal weakness, direct eye contact reads as challenge. Jake broke all 3 rules at once. He stared into those glowing eyes without blinking. His other hand drifted toward the hatchling's ear tufts. Textbook provocation. Instead of lunging, the Voidstalker sniffed the offering. Its nose wrinkled at the artificial cheese scent, a smell no evolutionary process could have prepared it for. Then it licked the curl once, twice before delicately plucking it from Jake's fingers. The crunch echoed through the silent hall. Professor Kethvar's recorder hovered at shoulder height, capturing audio so unprecedented the xenobiology department would later accuse him of fabrication. Voidstalkers don't purr. Their vocal cords evolved to produce sounds that liquefy prey organs at close range. Yet the noise rumbling from this one's chest was unmistakable. The frequency made Pip's remaining biogel vibrate in sympathy. Thane's fractures paused their spread mid-crack. Every scientific text on Voidstalker behavior claimed they assessed threats through trial eviscerations. None mentioned kneading their claws against the floor when their ears were scratched. Jake's technique wasn't accidental. The way his fingers avoided the sensitive base of the ears, the exact pressure behind the jaw. This was someone who'd pacified Earth predators with worse dispositions. House cats drew blood over lesser offenses. Geese held grudges for generations. Compared to that, a juvenile Voidstalker was basically an overgrown teddy bear with separation anxiety. Across the room, a med drone quietly recalibrated its threat assessment algorithms. The hatchling's purr hit a resonance that made loose bolts vibrate loose in the ceiling panels. One clattered onto Jake's desk. The Voidstalker batted it away with a paw, then nuzzled his elbow for another snack. Professor Kethvar's datapad displayed 73 separate warning flags. Elevated endorphins. Submissive posturing. The hatchling's respiratory rate matched documented relaxation cycles. His entire career's research hinged on Voidstalkers being irredeemable killing machines. Now his top student was feeding one junk food while it made biscuits on the floor plating. The class watched in a mix of horror and fascination. Pip had reconstituted just enough to form a single wide eye above her puddle. Thane's fractures began sealing themselves. Turns out Crystallians heal faster when not actively panicking. Even the Grothian delegation stopped vibrating long enough to exchange looks that roughly translated to, "Humans are cheating." Then the containment wall exploded. The blast hit like a freighter collision. Reinforced alloy buckled inward. Emergency force fields flickered online half a second too late. The hatchling's purr cut off mid-rumble as it whipped toward the noise, fur standing on end. Something massive moved in the dust cloud, a shadow twice the size of the hatchling, claws that could shred starship hulls, and a roar that liquefied the last of Pip's resolve. She drained straight through the floor grating. Adult Voidstalkers don't purr. They don't take snacks. They especially don't appreciate strangers petting their offspring. The mother's breath alone made the temperature in the room spike 15 degrees. Her tail lashed hard enough to shear a desk in half. Jake stood up slowly, cheese curl bag still in hand. He didn't run, didn't freeze. Just turned toward the new arrival with the calm focus of someone who'd faced down worse at his local dog park. "Hey," he said, gesturing to the hatchling now cowering behind his legs. "Patches has a guardian now." The mother's head tilted. Her nostrils flared as she took in the cheese dust on her offspring's muzzle, the relaxed set of its ears, the way it clutched Jake's pant leg instead of fleeing. Her growl stuttered. In the administrative wing, 17 panic buttons were pressed simultaneously. Dean Valthis started drafting his resignation letter. And Professor Kethvar's datapad officially ran out of storage from all the footage he'd recorded. But no one was paying attention to that, because the mother Voidstalker took one step forward, then another. Her claws retracted just enough to avoid scratching the floor. She sniffed Jake's outstretched hand, the one still holding the cheese curl bag, and made a sound no one present would ever admit to hearing. It wasn't a purr, but it definitely wasn't a roar. So, fun fact, Voidstalker hatchlings have mothers, and mothers don't like strangers petting their babies. The adult's entrance peeled the reinforced door off its hinges like a soda can tab. 8 feet of muscle and murder claws filled the doorway. Her ruff flared to twice its normal size. The roar she unleashed shattered 3 emergency light panels and caused Pip to fully liquefy into the floor's drainage system. Professor Kethvar's will drafting later revealed he'd left his entire estate to whoever survives the next 5 minutes. Jake didn't flinch. He stood with one hand still buried in Patch's neck fur, the other holding the half-empty cheese curl bag. His stance looked less like someone facing down certain death and more like a dog walker, about to explain why his terrier chewed someone's shoes. The mother Voidstalker's attack pattern was textbook. First, the intimidation display. Fangs bared, claws extended, bioluminescent throat patches pulsing threat colors. Next would come the lunge. Then the messy part. Except Patches has a guardian now. Jake's voice didn't waver. You'd think he was introducing a new club member, rather than negotiating with a creature that could bench press a shuttlecraft. His fingers kept scratching the hatchling's ears in slow, steady circles. Apex predators follow strict biological protocols. Maternal voidstalkers should eviscerate potential threats first and sniff them later. But evolution didn't account for cheese dust-covered offspring, or humans who talk to apex predators like they're slightly misbehaving golden retrievers. The mother's nostrils flared as she took in the scene. Her hatchling's relaxed posture, the lack of defensive wounds on Jake, the bizarre orange powder dusting both their muzzles. Her hesitation sent seismic waves through xenopsychology databases. Maternal aggression should override everything. Instead, her claws retracted just enough to avoid scratching the flooring. Her ruff settled slightly. The closest equivalent in Earth biology would be a grizzly bear, pausing mid-charge because her cubs were playing nicely with a hiker. Jake took advantage of the momentary ceasefire to reach into the snack bag. The crinkle of processed food packaging cut through the tension like a knife. He extracted a single cheese curl and held it out flat on his palm. Not tossed, not hidden in a trap. Just offered. The mother sniffed it, then licked it. Her pupils dilated, not in hunting focus, but in the same way earth cats react to catnip. The sound she made defied classification. Not a growl, not a purr, somewhere between a disgruntled mutter and a disbelieving chuff. Across the room, Tane's crystalline fractures began resealing. His species' stress damage reverses when adrenaline levels drop. But no crystallian in recorded history had stopped mid-panic attack quite like this. One of his classmates later swore the ceiling cameras caught footage of Jake mouthing, "It's okay" at him through the dust cloud. Back at Ground Zero, two things became apparent. First, adult voidstalkers enjoy crunchy snacks just as much as their offspring. Second, the mother had started mirroring the hatchling's posture, head lowered to Jake's hand level, claws consciously folded inward. It was like watching someone's terrifying attack dog suddenly remember they're technically a member of a domesticated species. The university's security feed later showed Professor Kethvar's real-time thought process unfolding. First, his datapad displayed voidstalker attack pattern analysis, then mating rituals, then inexplicably Earthwolf pack dynamics. By the time he'd pulled up human domestication of gray wolves, his hands were shaking hard enough to blur the screen. Jake didn't seem to notice the academic crisis unfolding behind him. He'd moved on to scratching behind the mother's ear tufts with the same focused precision he'd used on the hatchling. Her tail, which had been lashing hard enough to shear desks in half, slowed to a cautious sway. Then her head snapped up. Something small and liquid sloshed against her paw. Pip, halfway through the shameful process of reforming from her puddle state, made a noise like a deflating balloon. The mother sniffed her, then snorted in apparent disgust. Exactly the way Earth cats react to cucumbers. Research poured in from across the galaxy. Studies on Earth's wolf domestication got revived funding. Papers emerged analyzing how human children interact with dangerous animals. They what? They ride on them? One Flaxian researcher kept repeating to his assistants. The most cited finding came from Professor Kethvar's own notes. Stress inhibits learning. Cheese dust facilitates breakthroughs. Jake became the unofficial ambassador for this new approach. He moved through the modified classroom with the weary air of a zookeeper, supervising unruly but beloved charges. When Patches swiped a classmate's datapad, Jake simply said, "Drop it," in the same tone Earth dogs recognize. The hatchling complied instantly, then sneezed orange powder all over the device. "You can't just treat them like pets," Professor Kethvar protested during one observational session. "They're not pets?" Jake corrected, scratching behind the mother voidstalker's ears. "Pets get bath times." These guys would eat the shampoo. The professor's datapad filled with observations about cross-species body language, how humans maintain eye contact without challenging, how their blunt claws signal non-threat, how their persistent snacking creates positive associations. His previous theories, all predicated on dominance hierarchies, lay in tatters. Administrators struggled to keep up. The Budget Committee approved emergency funds for enrichment items. Translation: toys voidstalkers wouldn't immediately shred. The IT department configured classroom translators to interpret purrs and chuffs. Campus security trained with new protocols. Less tranquilize the threat, more distract with approved snack foods. Pip's transformation became a case study. Once prone to dissolving at loud noises, she now sat calmly while Patches batted at her biogel secretion glands like a cat playing with a water fountain. Her dissertation shifted focus from predator avoidance to interspecies play as learning mechanism. Thane made his own breakthroughs. Crystalline stress fractures had always been considered inevitable in high-tension fields. Now he went entire class periods without new cracks forming. His People's Medical Journals published his findings under the title, The Cheese Dust Hypothesis. The mother void stalker, dubbed Duchess by the student body, became a regular presence. She lounged near the climate-controlled vents, tail flicking lazily as students presented their socialization progress reports. Her occasional growls now served as feedback, not threats. When a nervous first-year Zeparian dissolved mid-presentation, Duchess merely sniffed the puddle and walked away. The void stalker equivalent of an eye roll. Joke's grading system raised eyebrows. He assessed Patches' progress through categories like table manners or D- and impulse control. Not great. The hatchling's ability to sit when commanded earned it extra snacks despite immediately. Most families have reunions. The Martinezes have interspecies peace treaties. When Jake's sister Emma arrived at Galactic University's main docking bay, the all-points bulletin sent to security read simply, Martinez family protocols in effect. Stock protein bars. Emma ran a xenoconservation program back on Earth, the kind of operation where endangered species could still bench press a truck. Her cargo manifest listed specimens for educational outreach, which university faculty learned too late meant large predators who like belly rubs. The crate labels bore cheerful warnings like, Contents 1-1 juvenile Krillix, do not open while smelling like prey. The university braced for chaos. Maintenance teams prepped emergency shields around Lecture Hall D. Professor Kethvar refreshed his will documents. Duchess the Void Stalker spent an uncharacteristic hour grooming her ruff, pausing only to glare at the crates like a cat watching movers haul furniture into its territory. Emma unpacked her charges with the practiced ease of someone who'd wrestled crocodiles for fun. First came the Krillix, 100 pounds of armored territorial instinct currently trying to chew through its travel crate. Then the Jarek, a flightless avian with enough bite force to crack asteroids sulking under a heat lamp. Finally, the real surprise, a juvenile aquatic smasher worm burbling in its saline tank. You brought a what? Professor Kethvar's voice cracked. Emma tossed the Krillix a hunk of freeze-dried meat. They're social learners. Show one how to non-lethally interact, the others copy. The Krillix caught the snack mid-air, then immediately wedged itself between Jake's legs like an overgrown, spiky lapdog. Galactic preservation tactics had always leaned toward containment. High walls, stun fields, minimal contact. Earth's approach was more throw food at the problem until it becomes your friend. Emma demonstrated by scratching the Jarek's neck feathers just right, prompting it to emit a sound like a garbage disposal full of marbles. The smasher worm proved trickier. Aquatic predators didn't much care for land dwellers, especially ones offering food it couldn't smell underwater. Emma solved this by strapping on an insulated glove and dangling a fish-shaped protein puck into the tank. The worm struck with enough force to dent the tank's inner lining, then paused when the snack didn't fight back. Duchess watched from her climate-controlled perch, tail twitching. When the juvenile void stalker Patches attempted to copy Jake's Krillix petting technique without protective gloves, she was there in 3 bounds, nudging her offspring away with a paw the size of a dinner plate. Then, in a move that made Professor Kethvar's datapad overheat from rapid note-taking, she sniffed the Krillix's spiked back and emitted the void stalker equivalent of a shrug. Studies later confirmed what the Martinez siblings already knew. Social learning spreads fastest through juveniles observing successful adults. By lunchtime, Patches was copying Jake's treat-tossing technique. The Krillix was tolerating ear scritches from Pip. Even the Jarek had stopped, trying to bite the furniture after realizing no one was stealing its food. Jake's casual explanation broke multiple academic paradigms. Back home, we figured out predators learn better from each other than from us. He demonstrated by offering the smasher worm another snack, this time holding it between 2 fingers underwater. The worm hesitated, then took it gently, its sucker-lined jaws retracting instinctively around human flesh. The implications rolled outward like shockwaves. Galactic conservation efforts had always assumed deadly species required isolation. Yet here was a smasher worm, a creature known for reducing research submersibles to scrap, learning snack etiquette from a human dumb enough to hand-feed it. Dean Valthus authorized budget reallocations before the demonstration ended. The Xenology department ordered 3 more saline tanks. Professor Kethvar added a new module called Cross-Species Modeling Behavior, which students immediately dubbed Monkey See, Monkey Don't Get Eaten. Then Jake dropped the real bombshell. Mom's visiting next month. Administrative panic spread faster than gossip. The facilities team ordered reinforced furniture rated for Earth-native guardian weights. The cafeteria tripled its protein puck production. Campus security quietly updated their first contact manuals to include a new subsection, Martinez Family Protocols. When Dr. Rosa Martinez finally arrived, she carried a single duffel bag and an aura of quiet competence that made even Duchess sit up straighter. Within hours, she'd identified 17 ways to improve the university's predator enclosures, fix the smasher worm's filtration system with a hairpin and chewing gum, and taught the Xeric to shake for snacks. Her methods were deceptively simple. "You're all focused on not getting eaten," she told the rapt class, scratching the Krillix under its armored chin. "Try focusing on being useful instead." The Krillix's tail thumped in agreement, nearly knocking over a bench. The real education happened in small moments. How Rosa stood just outside the smasher worm's strike range when feeding it, teaching it restraint. How she positioned herself sideways when approaching the Xeric, making herself look smaller. How she simply ignored Duchess's intimidation displays until the Void Stalker huffed and settled for sniffing her hair. Researchers cataloged every interaction. Comparative xenologists noted striking parallels between Earth's wolf sanctuaries and the Martinez techniques. Behavioral psychologists marveled at how quickly the predators adapted to predictable routines, feeding times, enrichment schedules, even basic commands. No one had considered that apex predators might enjoy structure. The most profound changes happened outside official observations. Pip stopped dissolving whenever Duchess yawned, revealing fangs the length of her forearm. Thine's crystalline structure developed fewer fractures during exams. Even the Grothian delegates discovered that slow rhythmic vibrations calmed the Krillix into nap mode. Joke's unofficial grading system expanded. Patches earned a C+ in not stealing food, but a solid B in gentleness exercises. The smasher worm aced snack precision, but failed not splashing professors. Professor Kethvar, now thoroughly accustomed to having his lectures interrupted by predator playtime, just sighed and recorded everything for posterity. When Rosa departed 2 weeks later, the university barely resembled its former self. Lecture halls had designated predator perches. The cafeteria served species-specific enrichment meals. First-year students no longer receive survival kits, just treat pouches and laminated instruction cards titled, "How to Pet Dangerous Things." The final memo from Dean Valthus's office summarized the revolution. Effective immediately, all terror response courses redesignated as mutual socialization studies. Budget allocated for interspecies play structures. Note to procurement. Order bulk ear-scratching implements. Earth's conservation tactics had gone properly galactic. No shock collars. No isolation tanks. Just the simple idea that coexistence worked better than control. That even the deadliest creatures might prefer snacks over slaughter, which, as Jake observed while hand-feeding Duchess a cheese curl without losing a finger, was really just basic manners. The university's newly formed interspecies etiquette department would spend decades studying the Martinez effect. Papers would be published, degrees would be granted, but the core lesson remained unchanged. If you want to make peace with monsters, start by offering them lunch. So here's the thing about facing down monsters. Half the battle's just remembering to breathe. Bring snacks if you can. Maybe don't run unless you're faster than the thing with teeth. The galaxy's slowly figuring out that fear's optional, like bringing an umbrella you'll never use. Earth's been teaching this lesson for centuries. Wolves became dogs because someone threw them table scraps. Horses let us ride them because we promised apples. Void stalkers purr because one idiot human forgot to be scared properly. If you spot Jake Martinez buying protein pucks in bulk, buy him a drink. The man saving the universe one cheese curl at a time. Imagine a classroom where the syllabus includes surviving apex predator hatchlings, and the professor greets you with, Welcome hatchlings like it's a threat. That's Galactic University's xenobiology program, where fear is the first lesson. But when they brought in a 230-pound juvenile voidstalker to test the students, the human, Jake Martinez, didn't panic. He asked if snacks were allowed. And what happened next? The predator sat beside him and purred. How does an aggressively average human turn a terror exam into an interspecies bonding session? Let's find out. Most universities warn you about late-night cramming. Galactic University warns you about being eaten. Professor Kethvar's xenobiology program doesn't bother with boring lectures on cell structures or mating rituals. His first lesson is simple: don't die before the final. The syllabus reads like a horror script. Week 4, Venomous Foliage Identification, Practical Lab. Week 8, Tactical Retreat Strategies, Field Exercise. Week 12, Surviving Apex Predator Hatchlings. The midterm? A live encounter. No simulation. No safety nets. Take Pip the Zeparian. Brilliant biochemist, total nervous wreck. Her species evolved to dissolve into harmless puddles under stress, which was great for escaping swamp predators back home. Not so great when facing a territorial Krillix in Exam Hall C. By the time Professor Kethvar finished roll call, Pip was already seeping through her chair's drainage holes. Then there's Tyne, a Crystallian exchange student whose people literally crack under pressure. Stress fractures spread across his limbs like frost on glass every time the fire suppression system tested itself. Turns out, most galactic species developed dramatic panic responses for good reason. The Zeparian dissolution reflex prevents digestion by acid-breathing hunters. Crystallian fractures create distracting shards that confuse predators. Kethvar's curriculum exploits these instincts, forcing students to confront their biological nightmares while taking detailed field notes. The classroom becomes a Darwinian gallery, whimpering Velnians emitting paralyzing pheromones, a Grothian delegate vibrating straight through the floor. Every species reacts exactly as predicted by xenopsychology texts, until Earth's submission arrived. Jake Martinez walked in 15 minutes late, apologizing for getting lost near the cafeteria. No special adaptions, no defensive secretions, just an aggressively average human clutching a coffee cup with xenobiology scrawled in smeared ink. While his classmates practiced tactical breathing, Jake asked if the vending machines took human credit chips. When Professor Kethvar announced the midterm would involve direct engagement with a juvenile voidstalker, Jake nodded thoughtfully, then inquired whether outside snacks were permitted. The room braced for bloodshed. Jake braced for a snack break. The containment unit hissed open, revealing 230 pounds of fluffed-up nightmare. Voidstalker hatchlings looked like someone crossed a grizzly bear with a porcupine, then gave it the glowing eyes of a creature that absolutely remembers your ancestors' crimes. Its claws left quarter-inch dents in the reinforced floor plating as it paced. The med drones hovered at standby mode, syringes prepped with enough tranquilizer to drop a small spacecraft. Pip the Zeparian was already halfway through her seat's drainage grate by the time the hatchling's second paw hit the floor. Her dissolving reflex kicked in so fast her notes floated in a puddle of biogel. 3 desks down, Taine's crystalline forearms developed a network of fractures so intricate they'd later be studied in Crystallian stress response seminars. Every species in that room followed evolutionary protocol: freeze, flee, or in the case of the Grothian delegation, vibrate at frequencies meant to shatter predator eardrums. Apex predators in confined spaces present an interesting psychological case study. Their instinct isn't just to hunt, it's to assess. The hatchling's pupils dilated as it mapped escape routes. Calculated threats identified the weakest prey. Its ruff flared when the med drones beeped. It froze when the Velnian student whimpered, a sound that, coincidentally, triggered 7 separate predator response patterns across known ecosystems. Then Jake Martinez crunched a cheese curl. The hatchling's head swiveled. Its nostrils flared at the synthetic cheese scent, an odor no naturally occurring food source on its homeworld could prepare it for. Jake held out the bag like he was offering fries to a coworker. "Hey there, gorgeous. You hungry?" The med drones paused their countdown protocols. Thane's fractures stopped spreading mid-snap. Predators don't purr. Voidstalkers certainly don't. Their vocalizations are supposed to be limited to bone-rattling growls and the occasional shriek that cracks glass. Yet the sound that rolled out of this one's chest was unmistakable. A deep, thrumming vibration that made the abandoned biogel puddle ripple in concentric circles. Professor Kethvar's datapad hit the floor. His life's work, 235 peer-reviewed papers on interspecies predator dynamics, had just been invalidated by a human snacking during a terror exam. The syllabus didn't cover this scenario. Galactic science journals didn't have a category for predators adopting humans as emotional support monsters. The hatchling butted its head against Jake's knee hard enough to dent the chair bolts. Jake reached down without breaking eye contact, scratching behind ears that could shred titanium. His fingers moved with the practiced ease of someone who'd pacified Earth creatures far less predictable than this overgrown death ferret. The claws that could gut a Grothian in one swipe kneaded the floor plating like dough. Somewhere in the administrative offices, 3 deans simultaneously received alerts about structural integrity warnings in Exam Hall C. The containment unit's reinforced walls shook, not from predator impacts, but from the hatchling's enthusiastic tail thumps. But what happened next wasn't in any textbook. The bag of cheese curls shouldn't have been allowed in the exam hall. That's the first thing Galactic University's disciplinary committee would argue about later. The second thing? Whether domesticating apex predators with snack foods violated academic integrity.